Madam Chancellor, Madam President and Vice Chancellor, Chairman and members of the Board of Governors, members of the Senate, members of faculty, Dr. Medjuk, fellow honorees, graduates, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I consider a great honor that your university has voted to confer an honorary doctorate on me. Indeed, I feel moved and humbled, but also greatly inspired to continue my efforts to research and encourage interfaith relations, dialogue, and education. Having been born and educated in France, I cannot help but begin by reflecting on the good French title of your ceremony today, Convocation. The word originally comes from the Latin cum and vocare, meaning to bring together, to assemble formally, a fitting description of today's magnificent ceremony at Mount St. Vincent. But the word also makes me reflect on its link with vocation, the calling in the world of business, the arts, science, education, and so on, for which your studies have so amply prepared you. So it's a ceremonious gathering together and at the same time a sending out to the various vocations you have chosen. It marks the first part of your social and professional life, a decisive moment marking the beginning of change, a commencement. This is, of course, true for all of you, young men and women, honored with me today in a degree ceremony to mark the culmination of your studies here as you prepare to embark upon your chosen careers. You are starting your professional lives on the threshold of a new century, a new era in the ascent of man. But you may wonder how this can be a commencement for me, possibly one of the oldest participants here today. What can such a ceremony signify for me? How can it represent the beginning of a great change? Well, let me tell you that a great commencement can happen at any age. I myself have proved that it is never too late to start anew, and my many commencements are possibly the example your Chancellor and the Senate of your university wanted to set you by honoring me. It was the great Hillel, a contemporary of Jesus, who, on being asked what was the most important commandment of the Torah, answered, "Love thy God and love thy neighbor like thyself." And he added, all the rest is interpretation. So perhaps I should sit down now, having delivered the essence of my message. Today, however, I would like to take you on a lightning journey into the past century which is drawing to a close and which my life roughly spans. It is a past I remember very well, because I was born soon after the Treaty of Versailles, which concluded the First World War, an appalling conflict in which some 10 million people died in battle, most of them young or very young men, while millions more died from war-related causes. I then grew up in the years of the world's great economic depression resulting from the disastrous costs of the war. Gradually, Europe's economies began to prosper, and by 1939, a certain euphoria was setting in when war hit us for a second time. As an adolescent, I suffered German occupation of my country, which wreaked havoc upon our way of life, our liberty, and our studies. Soon the whole world was at war, and this time 50 million were to die, amongst them some 25 million servicemen and 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. After this catastrophe, life would never be the same again. Conflict followed conflict, civil wars and wars of national liberation in China, Cambodia, Vietnam, Algeria, the Middle East, Tibet, Angola, and Mozambique, inter-ethnic wars following the dissolution of empires, killing a further 50 million, to which the wars of ethnic cleansing in Rwanda, Bosnia, and now Kosovo added another 2 million victims. Scholars estimate that in the 20th century, some 180 million people have died violent and unnatural deaths as a result of wars and genocide. Yet for those who have lived through this century, it is true to say that the impact made by reports of the century's achievements has led us to forget the past and set our sights on the future. It is, however, essential that we should know our history, and by this I mean the history of our world, to try and see where we went wrong and how to avoid repeating the errors of the past. We are so accustomed today to instant news reports from around the world that we are inclined to forget that for several long periods in my lifetime, news was exactly what we did not want to hear. Millions of people dreaded the postman with a blue telegram bearing the fatal message. We regret to inform you that. This should not, however, prevent us from remembering the 20th century great discoveries and progress, especially when set against the legacy of the previous century. The 19th century was marked for you by the outlawing of slavery as early as 1834 and the establishment of the Dominion of Canada in 1867, when several of your biggest colonies joined together, followed by the foundation of the new provinces of Manitoba, British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, as settlers from Britain and Eastern and Northern Europe moved westwards. For us in Europe, a century which literature often presents as the age of the romantic hero was in fact marked by a very high death rate due to a remarkable lack of hygiene and elementary medicine. The continent of Europe was plagued by epidemics and the ravages of the Napoleonic, Crimean, and Prussian wars. Lack of communication and transport isolated and retarded development, education, and social progress. Considering what my grandparents lived through, I'm thankful that I lived in a century which, despite its atrocious destruction of life, has also seen unparalleled technological advances and dramatic improvements in the world's standard of living, health, education, and communication. Without wishing to tell you how ancient I am, can you imagine that I was born at a time when in rural France you gathered around the family paraffin lamp and went to bed by candlelight? When few homes had running water, heating was simply log and coal fires, and children walked 6 to 8 miles in wooden clogs to the nearest school. In my lifetime, I have witnessed the growth of the motor industry, the spread of electricity to homes and businesses, and numerous firsts: radio, television, telephone, Lindbergh's Atlantic crossing, Gagarin's orbit of the planet, Neil Armstrong's moon landing, and shuttle refueling in space. Today, I use silicon chips to communicate with my colleagues via the internet. I can search the World Wide Web for any information I need. I receive mail by fax in 30 seconds from the other side of the world, and of course, I travel to Halifax for a meeting and return to London on the same day. All the wildest dreams of a Leonardo da Vinci or a Jules Verne have indeed come to pass. Man's aspiration of the 19th century and before seemed to have been fulfilled. Yet our ancestors did not envisage the invention of the atom bomb or the destruction of mankind by other human beings. They could not imagine Auschwitz and the Holocaust. Sadly, that evil concept was a product of my own generation, and I feel ashamed to have lived through these times and to think that we have left you that legacy. But there are lessons to be learned from such tragedies. I'm convinced that remembering and teaching these events are our only weapons against the recurrence of such unacceptable human behavior now and in the future. It is with this in view that I've accepted the chairmanship of a vast millennium project called Remembering for the Future 2000, an international conference which will examine the Holocaust in an age of genocides, taking place in Oxford and London, England, in July of next year. This future, which awaits you, promises to be astounding, offering immense possibilities. For in the past decade, more scientific knowledge has been created than in all of human history so far, and the future is already here. The epic phase of discovery is now drawing to a close, and an age of mastery is about to begin. and the period from now until 2020 will prove to be one of the most exciting times to be alive. By then, for instance, scientists working in Silicon Valley, home of the personal computer, the laser printer, and the mouse, will have perfected a way of adding a miniature computer screen to glasses, effectively giving any individual mobile access to the World Wide Web. Cars will sense when you are tired and warn you to pull over. Scientists will be able to view a person's complete genetic code, and your own medical card will list the disease you risk contracting in the future based on your inherited genes. Major 20th century scientific advances, particularly the quantum, computer, and bimolecular revolutions, have together given scientists unprecedented power and have themselves an intensely dynamic relationship. The recent torrent of genes being discovered is driven largely by the exponential increase in computer power. Soon, our molecular knowledge of cell development will be so advanced that we will be able to grow entire organs in a laboratory, including livers and kidneys. We will speak to our appliances, and they will be able to respond. The technology already exists. The only drawback is the cost. By 2020, the price of a chip will have fallen from hundreds of dollars to a few cents. All of this makes the year 2020 highly significant. With the advent of dirt-cheap microprocessors, scientists expect the net to wire up the entire planet in millions of computer networks, creating an intelligent planet that holds all human knowledge. This will eventually be like Snow White's magic mirror, able to speak to you with the wisdom of the human race. There is no doubt that the 2 decades ahead of you will be extraordinary. But it will be up to you to ensure that all these technological advances are put to proper use, that an ethical code of behavior still rules your lives. It will be up to you to heed the lessons of the 20th century and ensure that the fantastic scientific advances you have inherited from us, on which you will continue to build with your own brains and research, are used not for further unprecedented destruction, but in a positive spirit towards the conservation of our world, the advancement of a social order, a more equal society with love of one neighbor at its heart. And now, as I look to the future, I look out over this audience of bright young minds poised to take off into the world, and it is to you that I wish to address my closing remarks. I'm excited and heartened to contemplate the contribution you will all make to this developing process of mutual understanding. As you go forward in your chosen profession, be it teaching, business, scientific research, liberal arts, music or sport, dance or painting, the religious ministry or the civil service, I'm certain that you will be guided and inspired by all you have learned here at Mount St. Vincent University. Perhaps what the university did not teach you are some shortcuts to your personal happiness and satisfaction. On questioning your president on what she suggested I should talk to you about, she replied that perhaps I could pass on some of the wisdom that life has taught me. That is quite a tall order, as I am not sure that wisdom can ever be imparted. But I thought I would pass on a very few rules of life which have helped me to become wiser, more careful, more effective, more compassionate, and a better listener. You do not need many rules of thumb when all is proceeding smoothly, either because you are on a high and life is beautiful, or because you are in love and life is an enchantment, a marvelous dream come true. Alas, life on the whole is very tough, and we are confronted on a daily basis with problems requiring solutions. Through my life, I found it a great help to have some principles to which I can turn for guidance and for comfort. Perhaps the first absolutely basic rule, which I learned from the French poet and writer Baudelaire. He wrote, "Les travaux impossibles sont ceux que l'on n'a pas commencés. Impossible tasks are those we have not started." To paraphrase, do not procrastinate when faced with a problem which appears difficult or without solution. There is always a solution, and you will find it. Tackle it, and all of a sudden it will become much easier, and you will see that you do know how to solve it. The second one is WWWH, the acronym for why, what, when, and how. This is an excellent recipe for not rushing in to answer a problem without first pausing for reflection. Think calmly before an exam, in front of a prospective employer, or just faced with the problems of everyday life. Why am I being asked this question? What are they really wanting to know? Why are they asking the question? And how am I going to answer it? Then comes the rules of the 3 C's: concentration, conciseness, and consideration. This will follow you all your life. When you meet with a crisis, first concentrate on the problem and decide on the priorities. Then try to be concise about your answers and go for the essential. But be considerate. This means considerate of others and of how your answers will affect the other. When all the above fails, leave it to the next day, after you have inputted the data into your own personal brain computer and gone to sleep. It is quite amazing to discover that when you get up early in the morning, the answer which eluded you the day before is here online. Try and never go to sleep without your schedule ready for the next day. If you are a believer, when life is just too tough or the load too heavy, ask God's help. You will be surprised how effective and compassionate God can be when you ask for his help, and I assure you it works. Finally, stand out for what your conscience tells you is the right thing to do. I learned that from one of my mentors, Roy Eckart, who passed away last year. At a time when study of the Holocaust had left me profoundly anxious about the tenets of my own Huguenot Protestant faith, I was seeking reassurance and also wanted to discuss what could be done to counteract the ignorance and apathy of the masses in Europe and how the result of Holocaust scholarship could be more widely disseminated. How could we ensure that the world was never allowed to forget? Roy answered my questions and calmed my anxieties with great simplicity and wisdom. The real issue, he said, is what is the right thing to do. The challenge is not whether to be labeled as a Christian or a non-Christian. It is how to be human, how to be responsible. Just do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord and accomplish the task you have set yourself. From that moment, all became clear to me. Take the knowledge you have acquired and use it to develop your potential. Take the discipline you have learned and apply it to your lifestyle. Take the spirit you have captured and share it with others. Take full advantage of all the wonderful opportunities of life, but above all, love your neighbor as yourself. And I do wish you well.
On behalf of this Assembly and my fellow graduates, it is my distinct honor and privilege to thank Dr. Elisabeth Maxwell, honorary degree recipient, for her most moving and humane convocation address. Dr. Maxwell, you have been and continue to be an impressive female role model who has led the charge for societal change and public awareness. Your courageous struggle to bring about significant and lasting change on an international level is a constant inspiration. Truly today, we as graduates have been made very aware by our two honorary degree recipients, Dr. Dickinson and Dr. Maxwell, just how much of a difference one person can make. Their efforts will benefit society forever, and we will be forever in their debt. Today, as we become Mount St. Vincent University graduates, we are proud to be associated with these two strong women, whose determined objectives have each contributed to meaningful change and growth in their respective areas of expertise. On behalf of the graduating class of 1999, we thank you for your words of inspiration, your heartfelt efforts, all your many accomplishments, and for making our important day warm, memorable, enlightening, and special in so many ways. Your lives and your service are an inspiration and an example to us all.
Congratulations to our honorary degree recipients and to all those who have been awarded degrees this afternoon. We're all very proud of you. May God bless you, and we wish you the very best for the days ahead. There will be a group photo taken on the front lawn outside Seton Academic Center, so the graduates are asked to go there when these ceremonies are ended. The graduates and their families and guests are invited to a reception in the dining hall at Rosaria Center as soon as the convocation ceremonies are concluded. And I now declare this convocation closed.